I was standing in the middle of a crowded room, smiling, holding a small gift in my hands, when it happened. My grown son looked me dead in the eyes and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Get lost." It was like someone had slapped me. The sound of it echoed in my head, even though the whole room had gone silent. I froze, still holding the little box I'd brought for him, my fingers gripping it so tight they hurt. I could see people staring, pretending to look away but still watching. I felt heat rush up my neck. Music fades. Sound of a faint heartbeat then. Everything around me seemed to blur. In my mind, I was suddenly somewhere else in my bathroom that morning, standing in front of the mirror. I hardly recognized the woman looking back at me, thin gray hair pulled back into a neat bun, wrinkles around my mouth and eyes, shoulders a little hunched, as if life had been pushing down on them for too long. This was me, 68 years old, the woman who'd worked herself half to death to raise that boy. And today I'd told myself was supposed to be a happy day, my son's birthday, a day to celebrate. I'd even taken extra time picking my dress, simple, neat, the kind of thing a mother could wear without stealing attention from the star of the party. I'd wrapped his gift carefully, cufflinks he'd hinted at wanting, and an envelope with a check, like I'd done so many times before. I walked into that room thinking I was a welcome guest. Instead, I became the target. When my mind snapped back to the present, I was still standing there, still frozen. His wife, Celeste, was the first to move. Tall, perfect hair, that smile she uses like a mask. She laughed lightly, the kind of laugh people do when they want to smooth things over but also make sure the joke lands. "Oh, Austin," she said, nudging him with her elbow. "Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic. That's what she called it. Some of his friends chuckled awkwardly. Others glanced at each other, unsure what to say. The air felt thick, like everyone wanted to disappear. And then, I saw her. Sybil, my granddaughter, 15 years old, standing in the corner, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She looked at me, not with pity, but with something worse, hurt, like she couldn't believe her father had just said that to me. I forced my lips into a smile. My cheeks felt stiff, but I made them move. "Of course," I said lightly, as if nothing had happened. "I'll just step outside for a minute." I turned and strolled toward the door. I could feel every pair of eyes following me. Out in the hallway, I let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking. Why? Why would he say that? This was the boy I had carried for 9 months. The boy I stayed up nights with when he was sick, the boy whose scraped knees I kissed better. I had come here to give him love, and he'd sent me away like I was some stranger who'd crashed his party. I wandered down the hall toward the bathroom just to get away from the noise. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses floated after me, muffled now. I stood there in the quiet, my reflection in yet another mirror. This one is above the bathroom sink. Same gray hair, same tired eyes, but now there was something else in them, confusion. A kind of ache I couldn't put into words. What had I done to deserve that? From somewhere down the hall, I could hear Celeste's bright, fake voice, calling the guests back to the cake table. The music started up again. It was as if nothing had happened. Maybe for them, it hadn't. But for me, that moment felt like a tear in the fabric of my life. I pressed my palms against the edge of the sink and stared at myself. When, exactly, did my son start seeing me as an enemy? And why? Did it hurt even more to realize that I didn't know the answer? After I left the party that day, I couldn't stop thinking about his face. The sharpness in his voice. It wasn't the first time my son had hurt me, but it was the first time he'd done it so openly, so publicly. And as I sat in my quiet apartment later that night, one thought kept echoing in my mind. How did we get here? I guess to understand that, you'd have to know what my life looked like after his father died. Ben was only 49 when his heart gave out. One moment, he was laughing in the kitchen. The next, he was gone. Austin was 20 then, still in college, still a boy in so many ways. And suddenly, it was just the two of us. I was working as a bookkeeper back then. It wasn't glamorous. Same desk, same numbers, year after year, but it paid the bills. And after Ben died, those bills felt heavier than ever. I started working overtime. I took on side jobs, anything to keep Austin in school and keep us afloat. I cut back on everything. No dinners out, no vacations. I wore the same winter coat. For 8 years, if Austin needed money for books, I'd find it. If he wanted a new computer, I'd make it happen. If his car broke down, I'd write the check without hesitation. Back then, I told myself I was just being a good mother, that saying no would somehow be cruel, and maybe that was my first mistake, because over time, helping turned into rescuing. When he failed his sophomore year and got expelled, I told him it was okay that he could take a break. When he came home and lay on the couch all day, I didn't push him. I told myself he was grieving his father in his way. When he finally got a job thanks to a friend of mine, I thought things were turning around. That's where he met Celeste. Celeste was beautiful. I won't pretend otherwise. She had the kind of presence that made people turn their heads when she walked into a room. But behind the smile, there was steel. And from the start, I could feel that steel turning toward me. Still, when Austin told me he was marrying her, I didn't object. I even paid for most of the wedding, almost all my savings at the time. I thought, if he's happy, then it's worth it. But happiness doesn't last long when you're living beyond your means. They bought a big house that they couldn't afford. Celeste wanted designer clothes, spa days, and expensive vacations. Austin's income didn't cover it, so they turned to loans. And when the loans ran out, they turned to me. First, it was $5,000 for car payments, then $10,000 for unexpected medical bills, 20% for his new business, which failed in 6 months, and every time I said yes, I told myself I was helping him build his future. But really, I was just making it easier for him to keep living in a fantasy. A year ago, I tried to stop. We sat in a little cafe, just the two of us. I told him I couldn't keep being his safety net. It was time for him to stand on his own. He looked at me like I'd just betrayed him. "Do you feel sorry for your son?" he asked. Then with a coldness I'd never heard before, "What are you saving for? You can't take it to the grave." I backed down. I told myself it would be the last time, but it never was. And so, standing in that party hall hours earlier, with all those faces watching as my son told me to get lost, I wasn't just hearing his words. I was hearing every choice I'd made, every check I'd written, every time I'd stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. I'd given him years of my life, years I'll never get back. And now, for the first time, I started to wonder if he ever loved me for me, or only for what I could give him. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I'd stopped by Austin and Celeste's house to drop off a gift for my granddaughter, Sybil. She'd done well on a school project, and I wanted to surprise her. The front door was slightly open, so I knocked and stepped inside. "Hello? It's just me," I called out. And no answer. That's when I heard it, 2 voices, low, coming from the office down the hall. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I froze. Celeste's voice was sharp, impatient. "I told you, Austin. The bank wouldn't give me her account balance without a power of attorney or her showing up in person." Austin sighed. "We'll get her to agree. We just need to find the right way to ask." "Ask?" Celeste let out a short laugh. "You mean convince? If she leaves it all to Sybil, we can say it's for her education. She'll never refuse." That? I pressed myself against the wall, my stomach twisting. They weren't talking about a loan. They weren't even talking about a gift. They were talking about my life savings. Money I had spent nearly 4 decades earning, saving, protecting. Austin's voice came again, quieter this time, but I still heard every word. "She's careful with money, but she always gives me what I ask for. We just have to be smart about it." Celeste scoffed. "Smart? She just gave you $10,000 last month for your car loan. That's nothing compared to what she's sitting on. She could give us so much more if she wanted to." My fingers went cold. $10,000, nothing. Was that what I was to them? An open wallet? A bank account they could tap into whenever they pleased? I stepped back slowly, my shoes barely making a sound against the floor. My heart pounded in my ears. I'd always known Celeste didn't like me, but hearing my son, my child, speak about me like a transaction, that cut deeper than anything before. I slipped quietly into the bathroom and locked the door. The mirror above the sink stared back at me. Same tired eyes, same hair pulled too tight, but now, something new. Anger? Not the hot, screaming kind, the cold kind. The kind that settles deep in your bones and makes you see things you've been ignoring for years. That day, something in me shifted. When I left their house, I didn't take the main road. I stopped at a small bank in another part of town. By the end of the week, every penny of my savings, $3 million, was moved into a brand new account at a bank no one in my family knew about. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Sybil.it wasn't about hiding money from my granddaughter. It was about protecting myself from the people who should have been protecting me. For weeks after, I carried on as if nothing had happened. I smiled at family dinners. I brought gifts for Sybil. I even said yes when Austin asked for help with a little tax issue. But inside, I was different. I was watching him now. Watching the way his eyes flickered whenever money came up. Watching Celeste's polite but calculating smile. And every time they hinted at plans for the future, I heard their voices again from that office discussing my life as if I wasn't even alive in it. I didn't know it yet. But that overheard conversation was the first crack in the wall I'd built around myself. A wall of excuses. A wall of he's just stressed and she means well. Now, the light was starting to get in. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. The night of Austin's birthday, I told myself to keep things light, smile, be polite, give the gift, go home. I walked into their living room, holding the small wrapped box in one hand and an envelope in the other. I'd spent extra time making it look nice. Celeste greeted me with that smooth, polite hug of hers, the kind where you can feel she doesn't want to touch you. A little late, Rowena, she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I ignored the jab. Happy birthday, Austin, I said, holding out the gift. He took it with a quick thanks, tossed the envelope onto the table without even looking inside, and went back to his friends. I sat in the corner, watching. They were the picture of the perfect couple, laughing, telling stories, playing host. None of these people knew about the whispered conversations, the constant borrowing, the plans to get their hands on my money. And then, as I chatted quietly with Sybil, I noticed Austin picking up another drink. He'd already had too many. That's when I knew something was about to happen. A little later, the music lowered, and Austin stood in the center of the room with a whiskey glass in his hand. Friends, he announced, his voice louder than it needed to be. Thank you for coming to celebrate my 44th birthday. Some people clapped. Others just smiled politely. I have everything a man could want, he continued, his words slurring just enough to make me tense. A beautiful wife, a wonderful daughter, a career. I almost laughed at that part. Career, right. But, you know what I don't have? He paused for dramatic effect, swaying slightly. My chest tightened. Freedom, he said finally. Freedom to live my life without certain people, always watching, always asking questions, always interfering. His eyes locked on mine, and in that moment, it was just like the first time I'd heard him say it, that sharp, dismissive tone. The sting of being made into the villain in my own child's story. My mother, he went on, has always wanted the best for me, always been there, sometimes a little too close, if you know what I mean. A few awkward chuckles. Celeste shifted beside him, trying to take his glass, but he pulled away. And you know what I'd like for my birthday? His voice rose again. For certain people, family or not, to give me space, to let me breathe, to just disappear from my life. Silence. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Someone coughed into their drink. Sybil's hand tightened around mine under the table. Her eyes were wide, glistening. I looked at my son, looked at him, and I realized this wasn't just the alcohol talking. This was the truth he'd been holding onto for years. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. You know what, Austin? I said, my voice calm, maybe too calm. You're right, that would be the perfect gift. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in his glass. I'll give you exactly what you want. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I just picked up my purse, turned toward the door, and started walking. Mom, wait, he started. But I didn't turn around. Celeste's face was pale. The guests, some looked shocked, others curious. But no one stopped me, not even him. In the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me, light ones. Grandma, Sybil whispered, her voice shaking. Don't go like this. I touched her cheek, gently. It's all right, sweetheart. Sometimes people get exactly what they ask for. And with that, I walked out the front door. The night air hit me like a wave, cool, steady, quiet. Inside, the muffled noise of the party picked back up, as if my leaving was just a tiny interruption. But I knew better. Something had broken in that room. And it wasn't just my heart. It was the role I'd played my whole life, the giver, the rescuer, the one who always came back no matter how badly she was treated. I didn't know exactly what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I knew I wasn't going back to who I used to be. And I had a feeling. Austin had no idea what that meant. When I got home after the party, I didn't cry, not right away. I put my purse down on the counter, slipped off my shoes, and just stood there. My apartment was so quiet, it felt like the world had stopped. But then the silence started pressing in on me, and before I knew it, the tears came, hot, heavy, endless. I kept hearing his voice get lost, disappear from my life, and instead of fighting the thought, something in me whispered back, "All right, I will." I'd been preparing for this without realizing it, ever since that day in his office, overhearing him and Celeste talk about my money like they already owned it. Something inside me had changed. I'd moved my savings, all $3 million of it, into a private account under a new name. I'd started sorting through my belongings, selling or giving away things I didn't need. It had felt like just in case at the time. Now, it felt like a plan. I went to my closet and pulled out 2 suitcases I'd tucked away in the back. Inside were the basics, a few changes of clothes, important documents, and the small wooden box where I kept old photographs. Not many, just the ones that mattered. Ben holding baby Austin, Sybil and me laughing in the park, a family picture from years ago before the cracks started to show. The kitchen table. I wrote 2 letters. The first was for Sybil. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry I left so suddenly. This isn't about you, it never will be. I just need time away from your parents, away from all the tension. Inside this envelope is a phone. It's our secret line. You can call or text me anytime. But please, don't tell them. I love you more than you'll ever know." I sealed it with shaking hands. The second letter was for Austin and Celeste. It was short, almost cold. "You said you wanted me gone. I'm granting your wish. Do not try to find me. My attorney has all legal documents regarding my finances. My money is safe. Rowena." No explanations, no apologies, just the truth. By the time the clock hit AM, my bags were by the door. I'd already booked a small rental in a coastal town nearly 300 miles away under my maiden name. No one there knew me. No one would ask questions. I grabbed my keys, took one last look around the apartment I'd lived in for over 20 years, and turned off the lights. The streets were empty as I drove out of the city. Each mile felt lighter, like I was slowly cutting the invisible ropes that had kept me tied to a life that was choking me. Just before sunrise, I pulled into a 24-hour post office. I mailed Sybil's letter and phone from there, far enough away so it couldn't be traced. Then, as a final act, I drove past Austin's house, parked a block away, and slipped my short letter into their mailbox. No knocking, no waiting, just gone. By mid-morning, I was on the highway, the sun rising in my rearview mirror. I thought about what would happen when they found out. At first, they'd think it was just a dramatic gesture that I'd come back when I'd cooled off. Then they'd go to my apartment and see it empty. Then, they'd check my bank account, and they'd see the balance, almost nothing. The real panic would start then, but I wouldn't be there to hear it. By the time they realized how serious I was, I'd be in my little white house by the sea, unpacking my bags, breathing air that smelled like salt and freedom. No more being the family bank. No more bending over backwards to earn their appreciation. No more pretending I couldn't see the truth. As the road curved along the coastline, I rolled down the window. The wind tangled my hair, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Not because I'd gotten revenge, because I'd finally chosen myself. The first morning in Pine Haven felt strange. I woke up to the sound of the ocean instead of traffic. Sunlight poured through the thin white curtains, and for a moment, I forgot everything: the party, the shouting, the years of being taken for granted. It was just me. No phone calls asking for a little help. No strained small talk with Celeste. No waiting for the next financial crisis to land in my lap. The house was small, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a porch that looked toward the water. But it was mine. I unpacked slowly that first week, bought a few things from the local thrift store, found a second-hand bookshelf and filled it with novels I'd been saving for later for years. Later had finally arrived. Most mornings, I walked down to the beach. At that hour, it was almost empty, just a few fishermen on the pier and a woman who did yoga on the sand. People waved. They didn't know my name yet, but they noticed me. In Wheatland, I'd been invisible unless someone needed a check signed. One afternoon, I wandered into the local library. It was small, with big windows that framed the ocean. The librarian, Rachel, smiled and handed me a membership form. "What brings you to Pine Haven?" she asked. I hesitated for just a second before answering. A new chapter, and it was true in every sense. Of course, I miss Sybil. We spoke every few days on the small prepaid phone I'd sent her. Her voice was my anchor, warm, real, unpolished. She told me about school, about friends, about the latest fight between her parents. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice when she talked about home. "Are you happy there, Grandma?" she asked me once. I looked out at the water, the sun setting in streaks of orange and pink. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm happy." And for the first time in years, I wasn't lying. About 3 weeks after I arrived, I got my first test, a phone call. The number was unfamiliar, but I had a feeling before I even answered. "Mrs. Hampton?" A man's voice said. "I'm Alex Morris, a private investigator. Your son is very worried." I hung up before he could finish. A minute later, a text came through. "He just wants to talk. Your granddaughter misses you. Please call." I deleted it, blocked the number, because I knew exactly what this was, not a cry of love, but a lure. That night, at my little kitchen table, I made a promise to myself, and no one would drag me back into that life. Not guilt, not manipulation, not even my loneliness. Instead, I focused on building something new. I joined a book club that met once a week in a neighbor's living room. We talked about stories, drank tea, and sometimes laughed so hard we forgot the plot. I started gardening for the first time in my life, planting marigolds and lavender in the small patch by the porch, and little by little, I felt myself coming back to life. The old me, the one who measured her worth by how much she could give, was fading. The new me, she was learning to measure her worth by how fully she could live. It started with a phone call from Sybil. Her voice was quiet, like she was hiding in a closet. "They're fighting again," she whispered. "It's worse than usual." I closed my eyes. I could already picture it, Austin pacing, Celeste's arms crossed, both of them talking over each other. Since I'd left, things in their world had started to crack. Celeste was angry that I'd taken what was hers. Austin was angry that I'd embarrassed him in front of his friends. And both of them were angry that the money was gone. Sybil told me the mortgage payments were behind. The car loan was overdue. The vacations and spa days were just memories now. They even talked about selling the house, she said. "Mom hates the idea. Dad says it's the only option." I listened quietly, letting her vent, but inside, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not guilt, relief. This wasn't revenge. I hadn't left to punish them, but for the first time, they were being forced to stand on their own. A few weeks later, Sybil called again, more breathless this time. "Grandma, they're getting a divorce." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the waves outside my window. Part of me had seen it coming. Celeste's loyalty was to the lifestyle, not the man. Without my money propping them up, that lifestyle would have collapsed. When I asked, "Mom already moved into an apartment," Sybil said. "Dad, he's different now." "Different how?" She told me he'd stopped drinking. He'd gotten a job again, nothing glamorous, but steady. He was even seeing a therapist. "He's softer," she said carefully. "But he misses you. I can tell." I didn't answer right away. Missing me because he loved me, and missing me because I wasn't his financial safety net. Those were two very different things. Then one morning, I got something I never expected, a letter. The handwriting was shaky, and the paper creased from being folded and unfolded. "Dear Mother," it began. "I was a terrible son, selfish, ungrateful. I took your help for granted. And when you left, I was angry, not because I lost my mother, but because I lost my lifeline." That's hard to admit, but it's the truth. Divorcing Celeste has shown me things I didn't want to see about her, about me. I can't change the past, but I want to change the future. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I just hope, someday, we can talk again. Love, Austin. I read it twice, my hands trembling. It sounded sincere, but I'd heard apologies before, the kind that evaporated as soon as the bills came due. This one felt different. That night, I told Norman about it. Norman was my neighbor, kind, patient, and the first man in decades who'd looked at me like I was more than someone's mother or someone's wallet. "You don't have to decide now," he said simply. "Take your time, protect your peace." And he was right. Over the next few weeks, Sybil kept me updated. "Dad's trying," she'd say. "He's not perfect, but he's better." One day, she added, he asked if I could spend the summer with you. He said he'd even drive me. That offer stopped me cold. "Austin coming here?" Was I ready for that? Was I ready to let him see the life I'd built without him? I told her I needed time to think. And for days, I walked the beach, turning it over in my mind. The old me would have said yes immediately, hoping for reconciliation. The new me wanted boundaries, but I also wanted my granddaughter. A week later, I gave my answer. Tell your father he can bring you, I said. But don't let him expect too much. We'll talk, but I can't promise anything more. And just like that, I'd opened the door. Not wide, not enough for the past to rush back in, just enough to see if maybe, just maybe, people really could change. The day Austin and Sybil were due to arrive, I woke up earlier than usual. I stood at the bathroom mirror, brushing my silver hair. My cheeks had a healthy color now, my eyes clearer than they'd been in years. Pinehaven had done that for me, the walking, the ocean air, the peace. I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of his birthday party with her head held high and her heart in pieces. Today, I wasn't walking into this meeting as the mother who would give everything away to keep the peace. I was walking in as me. At noon, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Sybil was out of the passenger seat before the engine stopped, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Grandma, she shouted, running to me. I opened my arms, and she nearly knocked me backward. With the force of her hug, she smelled faintly of vanilla shampoo and something else. Relief. I missed you so much, she said into my shoulder. I missed you too, sweetheart. When I looked up, Austin was standing by the car, hands in his pockets. He'd lost weight. The arrogance I used to see in his face was gone. He looked older, but softer somehow. Hello, Mom, he said quietly. Hello, Austin. We stood there for a moment, not rushing, not pretending. Just two people who'd been through a storm, unsure how to step back onto the same ground. Come in, I finally said. I've made lunch. We ate on the porch, the three of us, with the sea breeze drifting in. Sybil chatted away, filling in the gaps with school stories and funny little observations. Austin mostly listened. When he did speak, it was about small things: his new job, the town he'd moved to, how he was trying to keep up with bills without borrowing. Not once did he mention money from me. And I noticed that, after lunch, Sybil went inside to unpack. That's when the quiet fell between us. I meant what I wrote, Austin said finally. I was a terrible son. I know I can't undo the things I said, the things I did, but I'm trying to be better. For Sybil, for myself. I looked at him. His eyes didn't dart away like they used to when he was lying or deflecting. I'm glad you're trying, I said. But you should know my life now. It's mine. I can't go back to the way things were. He nodded slowly. I wouldn't ask you to. When it came time for him to leave, Sybil and I walked him to the car. Thank you for letting me bring her, he said. And for trusting me enough to be here. She loves you, I replied simply. No matter what, you'll always be her father. His eyes glistened. He hesitated for a second, then stepped forward and hugged me. I didn't hug him back, not because I was angry, but because this was his moment to reach out, not mine to make easier. Take care of yourself, Mom, he whispered, and take care of your new life. You deserve to be happy. I watched as his car disappeared down the road, the sound of the engine fading into the hum of the waves. Sybil slipped her hand into mine. Are you all right, Grandma? I smiled at her. I'm fine, darling, and I meant it. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I sat on the porch with a mug of tea. The ocean stretched out before me, dark and endless, the stars scattered like diamonds overhead. Norman joined me, settling into the chair beside mine. What are you thinking about? He asked. I took a slow sip, letting the steam warm my face. Freedom has a price, I said finally. Sometimes that price is letting go of the past, even if the past is someone you love. He reached over and squeezed my hand. We sat in silence, listening to the waves, the steady rhythm of the tide reminding me of something I'd learned this past year. Quiet strength beats loud shame every time. And here, in this little house by the sea, with the people I chose in my life, not the ones who demanded to stay in it, I'd finally found both.